Hello, everyone. It's your host here, Swizz. Welcome to another wonderful video here of Love Up Mental Health. The topic I want to cover today, you don't have a worksheet here, but I want to kind of talk about the impact that cognitive behavioral therapy may kind of get a bad rep through some people, especially social media accounts of saying maybe some CBT or DBT is not working. The dialectical behavioral therapy, for those who aren't aware. Um, but what I want to kind of emphasize, especially for the purpose of using CBT and using DBT, if you're going to those licensed therapists, what to kind of expect from that. Hopefully, from the therapist that you're going to. So, just to kind of back it up, what CBT is, cognitive behavioral therapy is a way to allow us to increase the ability of in have that reflection on how our thoughts influence our behaviors and influence our emotions. It kind of have that triangle aspect of how they kind of all intertwine, right? So being able to kind of increase our understanding about that aspect is critical. Dialectical behavioral therapy, or DBT, is focused on kind of the ability of that emotion regulation, and especially for how they may play a role into our interpersonal relationships in our lives. And it's really about that kind of the emotional state that we're trying to understand. Now, a lot of the time, there might be some discussion about how, we feel, oh, I've tried the cognitive therapy, it didn't work, and that's as well too. Which, yeah, that could be the case. Maybe it's not the right approach for you, and something like, IFS, or even if it's related to OCD or something like that, exposure response, acceptance commitment therapy, things of that nature. That you feel may be more up your alley, right? But the whole purpose that especially from the work that I did at a IOP, an intensive outpatient program, where we combine CBT and DBT, I really saw a lot of impact when you're combining essentially those two particular modalities, because it makes sense that if you are decreasing your emotional state, it's going to allow yourself to think about those thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that are kind of influencing you, right? So the ultimate goal, as with everything, and I've shared a few videos here about like the DBT scale of emotional intensity, is that if you're trying to really just take a second to be able to understand yourself and your mental health and the symptoms that kind of come into play, first you want to make sure that your emotions are regulated. You can do that through DBT. So the skills I kind of covered here, like TIP, the halt, kind of looking at those things, being able to take care of and reduce that emotional intensity. The self-soothe, things of that nature, the distractions. Ultimately, we want to bring ourselves out of that heightened state that we're in, because if we're in that heightened state, we're not going to be able to really have that executive level functioning that we're thinking about, because in our mind we're viewing it as a crisis. So the goal is to bring ourselves out of that emotional state, and then that's when CBT comes into play, right? Through CBT, again, that allows us to have that calmer state to reflect on these things, whether if it is through journaling or something else, to really just kind of understand that, be able to kind of complete worksheets or whatever it is, right? So you want to make sure you can decrease that emotional intensity first before diving into that CBT. So if you feel like you're often in that heightened state, or you're in that fight or flight or whatever it is, you're perceiving things to be crises, you want to make sure that you're able to really just get out of that. And then once we're able to develop the skills needed for that, that's when the CBT comes into play. So hopefully that's helpful for you. If you like this video, make sure to like, subscribe. Otherwise, I'll check you in the next one.